What about the AD modal range? Aeolian Dorian modal range. Aeon to Dor. Red to spring green. 6 to 2 modal range. That's going to be a 3 shades of gray up, which is 3 modal half steps up, which is the 4th scale degree. It's going to be 5 notes up, which is aqua. Therefore, that 5 note away perfect 4th we often see as an aqua color. The 5 note away from the Aeolian node, third modal half step is aqua as well. An AP modal range, which is an Aeon fridge modal range, is a 6-3 modal range. A red sky blue modal range is going to be 4 shades of gray up, which is 4 modal half steps, which is the 5th scale degree. Note half steps 7, which we see all the time. That's deep azure. The 7 note away perfect 5th is deep azure. The 7 note away from the Aeolian node, 4th modal half step, azure. So the AY modal range, Aeolian Lydian modal range, the AO lid, red, blue, 6-4 modal range is going to be 5 shades of gray up. That's 5 modal half steps, which would give us the 6th scale degree. Note half steps are 8, which is grape. So that 8 note away from the 8 note away minor 6 will be grape. And the 8 note away from the Aeolian node, 5th modal half step, also grape. And we have the AX modal range, the Aeolian Mixolydian modal range, the Aeon mix, the red to magenta 6-5 modal range is going to be 6 shades of gray up, 6 modal half steps. That's the 7th scale degree. Note half steps are 10, fuchsia. So a 10 note away minor 7 is fuchsia. 10 note away from the Aeolian node, 6 modal half step is fuchsia. Finally, what if we're on the Locrian node? We're stranded on crazy Locrian. We're going from Locrian to Locrian, N to N, Loc to Loc, yellow to yellow, 7 to 7. Locrian to Ionian, Loc to Ion, yellow to yellow green, NI 7-1 modal range, Locrian to Dorian, a Loc to the door, yellow to spring green, 7-2 ND modal range, a Locrian to the Phrygian, that would be a Loc fridge. That would be yellow to sky blue, 7-3 modal range, NP modal range, Locrian to Lydian. That's going to be a Loc lid modal range, an NY modal range, yellow blue modal range, 7-4 modal range, a Locrian to Mixolydian modal range, a Loc mix modal range, a yellow magenta modal range, an NX modal range, a 7-5 modal range, and finally we have an NA Locrian to Aeolian modal range, a yellow-red modal range, a Loc AO modal range, 7-6 modal range. Looking at the distances, we've got an NN Locrian to Locrian is a 7-7, 0 modal half steps up, which would be the 1st scale degree, which has a note half step of 0. So that means that 0 is once again flame color. So a 0 note away perfect 1st is flame color. A 0 note away from the Locrian node, 0 modal half step is flame color. An NI modal range, Locrian Ionian, yellow to yellow green modal range has 0 or 1 shades of gray up, 1 modal half step up. It's going to be the 2nd scale degree. Note half steps, the color we don't see much, amber, because we only saw it in the Phrygian, because that's the only other one that has this crazy step of 1. And that's going to be 1 minor second is going to be amber. That means that the 1 node away from the Locrian node, 1st modal half step is amber color. We have the ND modal range, Locrian Dorian modal range, 7-2 modal range is going to be 2 shades of gray up, which is 2 modal half steps, 3rd scale degree, 3 note half steps up. It's following the convention for the most part of a minor mode, and that's why it's got the 3 on the 3rd, which is lime color. So a 3 note away minor 3rd is lime. A 3 note away from the Locrian node, 2nd modal half step is lime. Then we've got a 2-5 modal range, a Loc fridge modal range, an NP modal range, 7-3 modal range, which is going to be 3 shades of gray up, 3 modal half steps up, 4 scale degree. It's going to be 5 note half steps, which is electric sky. So that's going to be the crazy distance, which we saw on the Lydian, but it was the 4th scale degree on the Lydian. Here, it's going to be the 5th scale degree. So a 5 note away, perfect 4th. Now, wait a second. Hold on. That's not right. Erase that. That we're not there yet. That's going to be the next one. This is the perfect 4th, which is the only thing that's actually solid on the Locrian. This is the only solid one. So 5 notes away is not electric sky. It's aqua. This is aqua color for 5. It's solid. The only thing solid in the Locrian. And we have a 5 note away. Perfect fourth is aqua color. 5 note away from the Locrian node. Third modal half step is aqua. And this is the crazy one. So we've got the Locrian to the Lydian, the NY, that's the distance that's crazy. The NY distance, the yellow to blue distance, the Loc to blue distance, the 7-4 distance. It's going to be 4 modal half steps up, which is the 5th scale degree. And there it is. It's the 6 note half steps. That's the one. That's the one that's electric sky. I was so scared of the electricity, I anticipated it. And then I was like, I'm in the aqua. That means I'm in the ocean. I felt like I was in the ocean and I got to get out of there or something because the electric sky is coming. And if you're in the ocean, you get electrocuted because there's no trees or anything. Like you're the only one that sticks out. So the lightning hits you. So it's a 6 note away, diminished 5th. Therefore, is electric sky, 6 note away from the Locrian node, 4th modal half step, electric sky. All right, then we have a Locrian to the Mixolydian, an NX modal range, Loc mix, which is yellow to the magenta, 7-5 modal range. It's going to be 5 shades of gray up, 5 modal half steps up. That gives us the 6th scale degree, and it's going to be 8 note half steps up, which is grape. So an 8 note away minor 6 is grape, an 8 note away from the Locrian node, 5th modal half step is grape. Finally, we have a Locrian Aeolian modal range, an NA modal range, Loc AO modal range, yellow-red, 7-6 modal range, 6 modal half steps up, 7th scale degree. It's 10 notes away, which is fuchsia. That's a 10 note away. Major 7 is therefore fuchsia. 10 note away from the Locrian node, 6 modal half step is fuchsia. Okay. So now we could go back the other way. I won't go through all of the colors going this way because it's been a long time here. But if I go back this way, I'm going counterclockwise. Now remember, you can think of going counterclockwise as kind of like an octave lower. In other words, it would if I go backwards, it would be kind of like I went the maximum forward and then an octave lower. Is one way that you can kind of think about it. But from directionally, you can go in the negative direction. And remember, the problems that we have here are basically that our scale degrees are only really designed for forward direction and generally going forward direction within the 1 octave. And that's what, so they kind of fall apart going backwards. Why? Because they didn't start at 0, they started at 1. So that's the main thing we kind of want to point out when you're functionally working on an instrument like a guitar. You can go directionally backwards and kind of think about the inverse, or you can actually count backwards. And I think looking at a distance as though you're going around a lap, clockwise or counterclockwise, is useful. So for example, if I have an IN modal range, notice that's the same modal range that we ended with on our set below. So the range is the same. I'm not going to change the range. It's just that you can think of it now as though I'm going to that range forward clockwise or going to it counterclockwise, right? And this time I'm going counterclockwise, or you can think of the local distance as going forward. If you're thinking about 12 notes, you could say we're going forward and then subtracting 12, meaning it's an octave lower than the normal clockwise distance. Okay, so that means if I go backwards a step, it's going to be an IN modal range, which is the same here, but now we're looking at going backwards, which is a 1-7 modal range. It's going to be -1 modal half steps, which is -2 from a scale degree, but we don't really have scale degrees. That's the problem. It's going to be a -1 note half steps, which if I say 12 minus 1 would be 11 forward. So I can go 11 forward, which is -1 back, which is going to be a -1 major 7, because I'm just going to use the same major 7 and say it's an octave lower, in essence, is one way that you can kind of see it. Functionally, it's useful to memorize that in the local distances on the guitar or whatever instrument you're using, the major 7 could be 11 forward or 1 backwards. It makes more sense if you use this distance because it's going to be -1, which means, once again, I go counterclockwise 1, clockwise 11. Or from the Ionian node, if you think about it from the first modal half step, instead of the second scaled, it would be -1 modal half step. I'm not going to put two negatives. I'm going to imagine the negative just follows through here, so that -1 or counterclockwise 1 in a 7-point circle, or a circle with 7 spots on it, would be equivalent to going 6 clockwise. So this one gives us the measurement that makes sense going clockwise or counterclockwise, right? So if I go from the AI modal range, it's the same AI here, but we're going counterclockwise. So now it's going to be -2 modal half steps, which is going to be the equivalent of 5 shades of gray, because I'm using the same color system, not looking at different octaves with the shades of gray. And it's going to be then, you would think, -3 scale degrees if we had those. It's going to be -3 note half steps, which is still going to be grape, because we're using the same color system as though we went forward here, but -12. So it's like an octave lower. So you can see this one's a shade darker, but still grape. So that means the -3 major 6 is going to be a grape, because major 6 is grape, but it's a shade darker. -3 from the Ionian node 6 is going to be the same color, right? Is that a 9 note? I'm sorry, that's orchid, not grape. Okay, so let's go up another one. So this one is going to be an IX modal range. So that's the same as this IX modal range, but we're going counterclockwise, or -3, which is still going to be equivalent to 4 shades of gray going clockwise. And you would think it would be -4 scale degrees if we had those, but we don't really going backwards. It's going to be -5 note half steps, which would be equivalent to going 7 forward. Therefore, it's going to be azure, but it's going to be a shade darker because we're looking at an octave darker in the color. -5 perfect fifth, therefore, is going to be an azure, but a shade darker. -5 Ionian third modal half step, azure, but a shade darker. All right, if I go to the next one up, we have an IY modal range. So, but we're going counterclockwise, so it's the same here, IY, same destinations, but this time we're going -4 modal half steps, which would be equivalent to 3 shades of gray if we were going forward. And you would think that would be -5 scale degrees if we had those, but we don't. The distance is -7 note half steps. 12 minus 7 would be 5 forward, and that's going to give us our aqua. So a -7 perfect fourth is aqua, -7 from the Ionian node, a -4th modal half step is aqua colored. I'm carrying that negative through, remember. So then the next one up is going to be an IP modal range, same as this IP, but counterclockwise. -5 modal half steps is equivalent to the 2 shades of gray, and we have a distance of -8. 12 minus 8 would give us the 4, and 4 is going to be mint. So it's going to be a -8 note away. Minor third is mint, but a shade darker. -8 note away from the Ionian node. 5th modal half step is mint, but a shade darker. And then we have an ID modal range, which is the same here, but going counterclockwise. -6 modal half steps, which would be like 1 shade of gray. And it would be a -10 distance. 10 minus 12 is 2, which is chartreuse. So a -10 note away, major second is chartreuse, shade darker. -10 note away, Ionian 6 modal half, or -6 modal half step is chartreuse, a shade darker. Similarly here, if I go from the Dorian back, that would be equivalent to going here, DI modal range, but going counterclockwise, therefore -1 modal half step, which is equivalent to 6 shades of gray, and we have a distance of -2, which 2 minus 12 is 10, and 10 was the fuchsia amber. So -2 major second is fuchsia amber, a shade darker. -2 Dorian, -2 from the Dorian node, -1st modal half step is fuchsia, a shade darker. If we go DN modal range, Dorian Locrian modal range, but counterclockwise, -2 modal half steps is equivalent to 5 shades of gray forward. -3 note half steps backwards which is 12 minus 3 is 9 forwards. 9 forwards is orchid. So a -3 note away, major 6 is orchid, a shade darker. -3 note away from the Dorian node, negative second modal half step is orchid, a shade darker. A DA modal range is the same as this DA, but going counterclockwise, so it's -3 modal half steps. -3 modal half steps is 4 shades of gray. It's going to be -5 steps backwards. 12 minus 5 is 7 forward, which is azure. So a -5 note away from perfect fifth is azure, a shade darker. -5 note away from the Dorian node, -3rd modal half step is azure, a shade darker. You have a DX modal range, which is the same as this DX, but a shade darker. -3 modal half steps, which is still 3 shades of gray. -7 note half steps. 12 minus 7 is the 5, which is aqua. So that means a -7 perfect fourth is aqua. -7 from the Dorian node, -4th modal half step is aqua. And then we have the DY modal range is the same as this DY counterclockwise, -5 modal half steps, which is the same color here, 2 shades of gray. And it's going to be a -9 modal half steps. 12 minus 9 is going to be 3, and the 3 was lime. Therefore, the -9 note away major third is lime, a shade darker. -9 note away from the Dorian node, -5 modal half steps is lime, but a shade darker. And then we have the DP modal range is the same here, but counterclockwise. -6 modal half steps is equivalent to 1 shade of gray clockwise. -10 note half steps. 12 minus 10 is 2 clockwise, which is chartreuse. Therefore, a -10 note away major second is chartreuse, a shade darker. -10 note away from the Dorian node, 6 modal half step, or -6 modal half step is chartreuse, a shade darker. So similarly, we go through the Phrygian. You could do the same kind of exercise. We're running long on time here, so I'll just unhide these, and you can run through the same idea. For these, I find it useful to actually try to verbalize it, say it, right? And then down here, once we have that information, I could derive then, and we do this in an Excel worksheet if you want to just build the actual notes. You might be looking at this and say, well, how can I convert that to the notes? Well, all you have to do is use the distances and the formulas, and you can just say, okay, now I'm going to look at any particular note, any of the 12 collections of notes, and tie and say and then give a scheme that will then a formula that will give you all of the 7 notes in the 7-note collection derived from the formula based on the root note. In this case, we're looking once again at the collection of notes of the key of C. This note collection is now being tied to not the note points, but I'm sorry, not to the modal points, but to the note points. So this looks like the same to what we have been looking up here at for the color schemes for the nodes. This is color schemed for the nodes as well. But if I looked at this one, so now we have the Dorian, but it's not D Dorian, which is the relative mode, it's C Dorian. So now the C is still the same color, even though it's not the Ionian within this collection of notes, right? Because so now the D, right? So now we have a different collection of notes, and now you can see we here have some sharps and flats in here that we have not seen before. But the point is that I can just change that one note, and I can derive then a worksheet that will automatically populate, and it'll automatically give you the colors that you decide, whether that be an absolute color system based on notes, which is what we're looking at here, or possibly you can work it to get the relative color system based on the nodal points, the Ionian and the modal points. So this is the Phrygian, same idea. We've got the colors that are being derived. This Lydian, the Lydian color is the color by node, fixed node point, but then the colors down here are colors that are tied to the notes themselves, not to the nodal points. And then of course we have the same, for Mixolydian and Aeolian and Locrian. So in other words, when you look at it up here, if you think about all of the collection of notes we typically use in Western music, we typically work within a particular collection of 7 notes. There's 12 collections of 7 notes. I can think about that generically and then apply the concept to derive the notes or just simply move the pattern up the fretboard. That's going to be basically the easiest way to think about it. When you have more complex thinking in music, what will typically happen is you're going to think about switching collections of notes in the song. So that's what's going on in your mind typically. You're saying, okay, now I'm thinking of myself in this collection of notes. Now I'm going to think of myself in this collection of notes. Now I'm thinking about myself in this collection of notes, but around the Ionian node as the tonic. Now I'm thinking about this collection of notes around the Dorian as the tonic. And thinking about those collection of notes, I will mindfully go outside that collection of notes to add tension, but I'm still thinking about everything typically, in alignment with a particular collection of notes. That's how I think just logically the system is set up to kind of work.